The room buzzed with static, a low hum, vibrating through walls like a distant heartbeat. The digital feed flickered, then froze. A voice, crisp, emotionless, cut the silence like a blade. "They're already here," it said, sending chills down every spine. The screen cracked into chaos. Strange glyphs crawled across, glitching like corrupted code, an alien language pulsing with malevolent intent. Outside, dogs howled, alarms wailed, and across the skyline, streaks of unnatural light split the clouds. In an instant, every phone rang at once, every television hijacked, every satellite feed scrambled. The message wasn't just heard, it was felt, pressing against the skull like an invisible scream. The air tasted metallic. Panic seeped into the streets as people screamed and ran, not knowing where, not knowing why. In the center of it all, a lone figure, Kael, 34, male, wiry, with sun-beaten skin, stood frozen, transfixed by the voice. His breath hitched. His eyes dilated. This wasn't the first time he'd heard that voice. Somewhere deep in his memory it echoed. Then came the words, "We've been waiting for you." And time itself seemed to collapse into a single shattering realization. This was no first contact. This was a return. And Kael was the reason they came back. The signal didn't fade, it multiplied. Across the globe, ancient monoliths long buried began to vibrate, humming with the same frequency. In laboratories and underground bases, scientists stared in disbelief. This wasn't noise. It was precision. Structured, intelligent, surgical. Kael stood in the middle of the storm, his mind unraveling. The voice echoed again, only this time it spoke to him alone. "You remember, don't you, Kael?" The world fell away as memories not his own flooded in, visions of skies not of Earth, stars from long-dead systems, and a war that had never ended. A child screaming. A hand reaching out to him in the dark. Kael fell to his knees as lights around him flickered. He clutched his head, teeth clenched, as pain seared behind his eyes. In those fractured flashes, he saw his mother's face, then another face beneath hers. Alien. Familiar. Kael. His pulse quickened. Somewhere deep within, something was waking up. Something that had waited decades to be remembered. He whispered, "What are you?" But the answer came not in words, but in understanding. He wasn't chosen. He was created. Outside, the city had turned into a playground for terror. Riots erupted in moments. Governments tried desperately to control the narrative. Failing. Broadcasts urged calm, but the skies defied every lie. In a war room somewhere underground, a general muttered, "They bypassed our satellites like toys." World leaders sat pale-faced, watching a language older than humanity crawl across their secured networks. But no one mattered anymore, not presidents, not scientists. Only Kael. He ran now barefoot, through alleys lit by emergency glow. His mind was on fire with names and places that didn't exist. Or shouldn't. His body was changing, cells responding to something buried deep inside. His fingerprints flickered like static. The voice in his head whispered truths he wasn't ready for. "You're the bridge," it said. "The door between worlds." Kael fell against a wall, gasping, trembling. "This is wrong," he muttered. But the wall behind him hummed and lit up with symbols glowing faintly beneath the bricks. There was no denying it. They were here. And so was he. Kael stumbled into an abandoned subway tunnel, the noise above muffled. A low vibration ran through the rails. Lights flickered, then stabilized in an unnatural green hue. His breathing slowed. He felt pulled. Down the tunnel, a figure waited. Unmoving. Cloaked. Kael's legs moved without consent. Step by step, like a puppet on memory's string. "You are not who you think," the voice said again, this time from the figure's mouth. As Kael approached, the figure turned, a mirror image of him. But older, pale, alien eyes where human ones should be. It smiled, but the gesture was hollow. You were split, 2 lives, 1 lie. Kael reached out, and the moment he touched the figure's hand, a shockwave knocked him back. Symbols lit up along the tunnel walls, dancing like fire. You're waking up, the figure said before vanishing. Kael screamed, not from fear, but from truth. He hadn't been alone inside his own body for years. He was the vessel. And now, the other was rising. Above the surface, the alien lights began to form patterns, circles intersecting, glyphs aligning in the sky. Entire power grids veiled. In the silence, Earth held its breath. People watched the heavens, no longer asking if but why. And somewhere deep in an Arctic facility, a computer pinged. A match. Body. Kael's DNA had been triggered by the signal. Not just his. Thousands across the globe. All with trace elements from something not of Earth. But Kael's was different. It wasn't just activation. It was command. The alien fleet didn't just come to invade. They came to follow. To retrieve. Back in the tunnel, Kael collapsed, skin shimmering for a moment in alien iridescence. No more lies. The voice growled. Awaken. And Kael, still gasping, still shaking, opened his eyes, and for the first time saw the world not as a man, but as something far more dangerous. The invasion had begun, but he was the real weapon. Kael awoke on a metal cot inside a stark white room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. His body was bare, bandaged, but strangely numb. A biometric reader glowed near his temple. He sat up, confused, until the door hissed open. A woman entered, around 40, sharp-eyed, dressed in a black tactical suit. Kael, she said, you're not supposed to be alive. Her name was Commander Rhea, former military, now part of a shadow organization tasked with alien containment. Kael struggled to speak. Where am I? Rhea answered without emotion. One of the few places still untouched by the chaos you triggered. On the screen beside her, footage played, cities burning, sky lit with glyphs, crowds panicking. Kael's image was everywhere. They're calling you Patient Zero, she said. He stood, his body shaking. I didn't choose this. Rhea leaned in. No one ever does. For a moment, Kael saw something human behind her eyes. But it vanished as she turned and walked away. He wasn't a person to them. He was a variable. A weapon. And Rhea was already calculating the cost. Rhea brought Kael to a briefing room lined with monitors. Global feeds flickered. Riots, military lockdowns, alien formations in the sky. Kael's hands trembled as he saw himself labeled. Anomaly K1, they think you triggered them, Rhea said. We know better. You're the key, not the cause. He stared at her. Then, unlock me. Explain. Rhea hesitated. We don't have full access. Your DNA's encrypted. By them. She handed him a photograph. A woman. His mother, younger than he remembered. In the photo, her eyes glowed faintly. She was one of the first hybrids, Rhea said. Your bloodline is engineered. Kael felt the ground shift beneath his understanding. His past wasn't his own. He had always been a part of this war. Why didn't she tell me? He whispered. Because she couldn't, Rhea replied. They built fail-safes, memories locked away until activation. Kael clenched his fists. Then, unlock everything. Rhea nodded grimly. We will. But it's going to hurt. As the lights dimmed, Kael knew pain was the only way forward. In a soundproof chamber, Kael sat in a neurologic sync chair, strapped in, sensors attached to his temples and spine. His jaw tightened as Rhea monitored from behind the glass. Begin memory dive, she ordered. The machine whirred to life. In a second, Kael's body jolted. He was no longer in the chair. He stood in a field of stars, the earth a distant shimmer behind him. Alien voices whispered around him, words curling through space like smoke. Then, his mother appeared. Younger. Ethereal. She reached out. "Remember, Kael," she said. "You're not just flesh, you're code." His mind split open like glass. Fractured images assaulted him. Experiments, screaming, soldiers, beings of light and shadow. A facility with no flag. A doctor with two faces. And always the voice. "You are the key." Kael screamed in the chair, blood from his nose. Monitors spiked. Ree's assistant yelled, "He's breaking!" But Rhea didn't stop it. She whispered, "Let him." Because the only way to survive was to remember the truth, even if it destroyed him. Kael woke on the cold chamber floor, unstrapped but shaking. Around him, the world felt louder. Lights pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He could hear electricity. Smell metal. Rhea knelt beside him, holding out a vial. "Stabilizer," she said. He slapped it away. "No more control," he growled. Rhea didn't flinch. "Then control yourself." Kael stared at his hand. It flickered, momentarily transparent. "They were testing me before I was born," he said. "Not just watching, building me." Rhea stood. "Then use it." Kael looked up, eyes glowing faintly. "Why help me?" She hesitated. "Because I've seen what happens if you don't survive this." She handed him a file marked Project Echo. Inside, schematics, surveillance of others like him. Some dead. Some missing. One still active, in the city. Kael stood shakily, jaw set. "I need to find them." Rhea nodded. "Then don't waste time." For the first time, Kael didn't feel like prey. He felt like a fuse, burning towards something vast and explosive. Kael walked through the ruined outer city, hoodie pulled over his head. Civilians stared at the sky where alien shapes hovered in absolute silence. Drones buzzed overhead. News screens displayed nothing but fear and confusion. Kael moved like a ghost through the crowd. His thoughts screamed. The world believed the invasion was about power, but Kael now knew better. It was about retrieval. About reclaiming what was theirs. He spotted something, a flicker in the alley's shadows. A figure, female, maybe early 30s, watching him. Eyes glowing faintly. She vanished before he could speak. Another like him. Ree's intel was real. He followed her trail through broken streets until it led to a place marked only by a symbol he now recognized, an ancient alien sigil. As he stepped through the doorway, he felt his blood resonate. A voice whispered, not from the air, but from within, "Welcome home." He wasn't just part of this. He was its beginning. And the others were waiting. Kael descended into the depths of an abandoned transit tunnel, following the sigil that pulsed on the wall like a living heartbeat. The woman who had vanished was waiting. Her name was Ira, 32, tall, with silver-streaked hair and the same glow in her eyes. "You're awake," she said. Finally. Kael studied her face. She looked like him, like someone caught between species. "What are we?" he asked. "Hybrids," Ira answered. "Children of the divide." She led him deeper into the makeshift compound, where others like them waited. Dozens. Some mutated, others stable. All watching him with wary hope. "This isn't about survival," Ira explained. "It's about retaliation. We were experiments, but now we're weapons." Kael felt rage stir within him. They had been manipulated from birth, shaped for war they never chose. "Who did this to us?" he asked. Ira answered with one word. "Humans." And in that moment Kael realized the truth. The aliens may have invaded, but the betrayal began on Earth. The deeper Kael moved into the compound, the more grotesque the reality became. Rooms filled with vials, surgical tools, containment pods, all relics from human experimentation. Kael stared at a photo nailed to the wall. His mother, younger, in a lab coat, smiling beside an alien specimen. "They lied to us," he whispered. Ira's voice was hollow. "We were bred in secret, raised to blend in. monitored by handlers. Some of us escaped, most didn't. One young hybrid sat on the floor, his skin partially translucent, his bones faintly visible. Kael turned away. They partnered with them, Ira continued. Certain factions of humanity, secret governments. They invited the aliens in. Traded lives for technology. Kael's stomach turned. His fists clenched. So we're not their prisoners, we're their product. Ira nodded solemnly. We were never meant to survive, only to serve. Kael felt the fire build inside him. Then they don't get to hide anymore. The war wasn't just above. It had already begun down here. Ira led Kael to a war table, an old subway map now repurposed with markers and alien interface tech. There's a Nexus site beneath Capital Sector 9, she said. They've kept it hidden for 40 years. The map lit up with a red pulsing dot. That's where they transmit commands. If we destroy it, we sever their control. Kael studied the layout, jaw tight. It's guarded? Ira smirked. By both sides. Kael raised an eyebrow. Aliens and humans working together? She nodded. The ones profiting from all this, they don't want peace. Suddenly, a voice behind them hissed, "He's not ready." It was Varric, a hybrid elder, half his body armored in exo-flesh. "He's unstable," Varric growled. Kael met his gaze. "Try me." Sparks lit between them, tension rising. Ira stepped in. "We don't have time for this. Kael's not just one of us, he's the one the enemy fears." Everyone turned to him then, some with hope, others with doubt. Kael's answer was silent, but deadly clear. He was going to the Nexus. And nothing would stop him. Night fell harder above ground. Kael emerged from the tunnel flanked by Ira and a small group of hybrids. The city skyline burned in silence. Alien structures now pierced its highest towers. Their presence was no longer hidden. Civilians hid indoors, terrified. Drones hovered silently overhead. Kael's body felt different. The pain had faded. His heartbeat synced with the glyphs he now saw, etched into the sky. He was beginning to understand their meaning, not as language, but as code. Signals. Directives. Weaponized thought. Ira whispered, "We make contact tonight, infiltration first, then destruction." Kael nodded. They moved like shadows, blending into abandoned streets. Every turn felt wired, every silence too loud. When they reached the edge of Capital Sector 9, Kael's body tensed. "We're being watched," he said. A figure stepped from the shadows. A man Kael once called brother. "You should have stayed asleep," the man growled. His eyes glowed blue. Another sleeper agent. The betrayal wasn't over. It had only just begun. Kael stood frozen, heart pounding. The man in front of him, Joran, his childhood friend, now stood altered, infiltrated, glowing with alien energy. "They found me years before you," Joran said coldly. "I was chosen to monitor you." Kael's fists trembled. "You lied to me," he growled. "You were my brother." Joran smirked. "I still am, just upgraded." A flash of movement, and the fight began. Joran struck with inhuman speed. Kael countered, their blows rippling with kinetic energy. Buildings shuddered from the force. The hybrids backed away, giving them space. Ira drew her blade, but held back. "He must face this alone," she whispered. Dust and glass erupted around them. Joran snarled, "You're too late, Kael. The Nexus is already active." Blood dripped from Kael's mouth. Then, "I'll burn it down." With a final roar, Kael's body lit up with alien code surging beneath his skin. He drove Joran into the ground. There was no brotherhood left, only war. And Kael had finally accepted his place in it. The ground where Joran fell still pulsed with residual energy, a ghost print of their battle. Kael knelt beside the body, hands shaking, not from pain, but from the echo of Joran's last words. "It was always you," Your blood, your fault. Rhea appeared, emerging from a nearby structure with armed operatives in tow. Her eyes locked on Kael. He was right, she said coldly. You were never meant to be a soldier. You were bred to be a signal. Kael rose slowly, fists clenched. What does that mean? She tossed him a hollow core. Your DNA sequence is a cipher, a master key. That's how the Nexus functions. Kael's voice dropped. They're using me to power it. Rhea nodded. Your family line was never random. Your mother? She didn't fall in love with an alien. She was assigned. The weight of her words crushed him. His entire existence was curated, controlled, manipulated. So what am I now? Kael whispered. Rhea's gaze hardened. That depends. Do you want to finish their plan, or end it? The choice wasn't abstract anymore. It was in his veins. He wasn't just the bridge, he was the blueprint. Kael stared into the flickering projection from the hollow core. His mother's voice played back, soft, hesitant. If you're hearing this, it means the truth found you. I was never your mother by choice. I was your handler. But I did love you. Her image trembled, and Kael's breath hitched. You are the seed of convergence. Your genome is the final calibration, she said. I fought them for years, but in the end, I gave in. They needed you, and I gave you to them. The message ended, and silence followed. Ira stepped forward, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. You weren't the mistake, you were the plan. Kael stood, rage igniting. So they made me, to control everything. Ira nodded. You're the interface. The Nexus was built around your lineage. That's why it's responding now. Kael looked skyward. The glyphs had begun to move, aligning slowly like gears. Then let's destroy what they built around me. The others stepped back as Kael's body began to glow once more. Not with pain, this time, with purpose. The hybrid force, now fully mobilized, gathered in an abandoned stadium turned war staging ground. Ira briefed the units. The Nexus sits beneath Capitol Tower, human security topside, alien tech underground. We strike at midnight. Kael stood at the center watching them, each hybrid a symbol of what had been stolen. We don't fight to survive, he said. We fight to break the chain. The crowd responded with silent nods. They were tired of hiding, tired of being controlled. It was time to burn the system down. Rhea approached quietly. Are you sure you're stable? Kael didn't look at her. I'm not, he answered. And that's what they should fear. He turned to Ira. Once I reach the core, cut all power to the Nexus. If I fail, blow it. Ira frowned. You might not come back. Kael smiled bitterly. I was never supposed to be here anyway. They clasped hands, the final moment before war. Kael walked into the shadows toward his own beginning, and his end. Midnight fell like a blade. The operation began with synchronized strikes. Hybrids infiltrated the upper structure while Kael, flanked by Ira and Varric, descended into the catacombs beneath Capitol Tower. The deeper they went, the stranger the architecture became. Smooth black stone fused with alien alloy, pulsing with coded light. It wasn't built, it was grown. Kael's skin reacted to the proximity, glyphs along his arms glowing brighter. It knows I'm here, he said. Ira whispered. Then it's waiting. They reached a massive circular chamber, at its center, the core. A levitating obelisk of shifting light and metal, humming like a heartbeat. As Kael approached, tendrils of energy extended toward him, scanning, welcoming. It's trying to complete the cycle, he muttered. Varric growled, we end this now. Kael raised his hand, and the core pulsed in reply. No, Kael said, voice resolute. I finish it. Alone. He stepped into the light and the chamber closed behind him. A lock. A test. A truth yet to be faced. Inside the chamber, silence reigned. Kael stood before the core as it shimmered, forming images, memories not his own. He saw ancient battles, agreements made in desperation, and human officials handing over DNA samples to alien figures. His bloodline wasn't born, it was forged in betrayal. The core spoke, not in words, but in feeling. You are legacy, you are command. Kael cried out, I refuse, but the energy wrapped around him like a cage, not allowing anger, only connection. His consciousness expanded. He saw the planet from above, the fleet waiting, listening. War. With one thought, he could stop it all, or trigger annihilation. But his rage was not blind anymore. Kael reached deep inside, not to destroy, but to rewrite. He changed the code. He rejected the signal. The core trembled, lights flickering wildly. In the control center above, systems failed. Rhea screamed into her comms. Ira whispered, he's doing it. The core cracked. Kael's final words echoed in the collapsing chamber. You used me to control, now I use you to free. And everything went white. The explosion of light from the Nexus core sent a shockwave through every system on the planet. Satellites blinked out. Communications crashed. Alien ships hovering in the sky stalled mid-flight, flickering like broken thoughts. Inside the chamber, Kael collapsed. The core was gone, destroyed not by brute force, but by his refusal to follow the code. Ira and Varric forced the doors open and rushed in, shielding their eyes. He's alive! Ira gasped, kneeling beside Kael's smoldering form. His skin shimmered with pulsing light beneath the surface, but his eyes were open. And human. Did it work? Kael rasped. Rhea's voice buzzed in over comms. The fleet's fractured. No more synchronization. You broke the link. Kael smiled weakly. Good. Then we can finally make noise. Outside, hybrid teams lit beacons across major cities, signals to the world that the power had shifted. The aliens were still present, but blind. And the humans who had served them in secret were now exposed. But Kael knew better. This wasn't over. The storm was only beginning to take shape. Above ground, the world reacted with confusion and terror. Power outages swept across continents. Air traffic halted. Defense systems went dark. The glyphs in the sky faded into static. Civilians emerged from shelters, eyes turned upward. In Capital Sector 9, Rhea stood before a live broadcast panel. To the people of Earth, she said, you are free. Her voice trembled, just slightly. The systems that once enslaved us have been dismantled, not by armies, by truth. Her image was transmitted across emergency frequencies, raw, unfiltered. Kael watched the broadcast from the med bay of the refuge, a healing field slowly knitting the burned skin across his ribs. Ira stood nearby, arms crossed. You just exposed everything, she said. Now, the world will hunt what they don't understand. Kael exhaled slowly. Let them. At least now they'll be hunting in the light. He touched the bandages across his chest. They used us as weapons. It's time we aim ourselves back. His tone wasn't angry. It was cold, focused. The reckoning had begun. As the sun broke over the horizon, the sky above the capital city was still marked by the scars of the invasion. Alien towers, now dormant, cast shadows over broken monuments. Hybrid teams moved through the streets, disabling last remaining control nodes. Ira led the charge, flanked by Kael, whose presence now caused alien tech to recoil, shrink, and die. They still respond to you, she noted. Kael nodded grimly. Only because they still think I belong to them. In the ruins of a collapsed skyscraper, they found what remained of one of the central human-alien coordination hubs. Inside, a vault. Locked. Kael stepped forward. The lock scanned his DNA and clicked open. Inside, rows of cryogenic pods. Human. Way. Alien. Hybrid. Experiments. They were stockpiling us, Ira whispered. Spare parts for a future war. Kael walked through the rows in silence. Every life in there was a version of him, a mirror of a fate he avoided. No more cages, he said. And with a thought, the systems shut down, not to kill, but to release. The released subjects stumbled into the light like ghosts. Most were disoriented. Some too far gone. A few, aware, and angry. Among them was a girl, no older than 12, eyes glowing like Kael's. She clung to his leg, silent. Kael knelt. "You're safe now," he said. She shook her head. "They're still listening," she whispered. Kael looked to Ira. "She's right." The core was broken, but the signal remained, fragmented, faint and buried deep. Back at the command center, Varric worked to trace residual signal traces. "It's not just one Nexus," he growled. "There are more." Kael stared at the city map, now pulsing with red markers. This wasn't the center, he realized. It was the ignition. He turned to Ira. "We need to hit them before they reboot." Ira hesitated. "What if we don't make it?" Kael's eyes glowed faintly. "Then we take as many of them down as we can." His hand found the child's. The war wasn't over. It had simply changed form. They moved quickly now, tracking energy surges, triangulating unknown signals. Across the globe, rogue alien tech began to awaken in isolated bursts. Kael stood in the center of the command chamber, eyes closed, reaching out. "They're reconnecting," he murmured. Rhea entered, eyes narrowed. "Then we strike first." Ira nodded. "We've got strike teams on standby." Kael opened his eyes. "No, this is mine. I started it. I finish it." Rhea stepped forward. "You finish it, or you become it." For a long moment, silence hung. Then Kael stepped onto the uplink platform, his body bathed in red gridlight. "Send me the coordinates. I'll go alone." Ira clenched her jaw. "You're not alone." She stepped forward. "We all burn for this." Kael's smile was faint but real. "Then let's burn together." As the countdown began, the hybrid resistance rose, not as victims, not as tools, but as warriors born of betrayal and sculpted for vengeance. The next attack would not be defense. It would be fire. And Kael would lead the charge. The infiltration began under moonless skies. Across continents, hybrid strike teams deployed via stealth transports. Their target, buried alien cores hidden beneath old cities, deserts, and mountain vaults. Kael's team descended on the primary site, a sunken facility beneath Siberian ice, long dormant, now pulsing with power. "Heat signatures rising," Ira whispered. "They're waking it." Kael adjusted the tactical gloves on his hands, which pulsed with soft glyph light. "Then we shut it down before it speaks." They moved fast through frozen corridors, lit by flickering alien luminescence. Structures seemed to shift as they passed, like living architecture adapting to their presence. At the heart of the complex, a pulsating reactor hummed, alive. Kael pressed his palm to a glowing control panel. It responded, unlocking layers of encrypted systems. Then came the noise, a low, deep voice speaking inside their heads. Not alien, not human, something in between. Kael staggered. "They're not broadcasting, they're calling me home." Ira grabbed his arm. "Then don't answer." The walls came alive. Tendrils of light burst from conduits, scanning Kael's body, sensing with his energy. His vision blurred, flickering between now and something else, a time before Earth, before war. He saw them, tall, luminous beings, creators, watching a younger version of himself form inside a tank. Ira shouted in the present, "Kael, we've got movement!" Kael blinked back to reality. Armed sentinels emerged from the ground, limbs unfolding, glowing blades in hand. No hesitation. The hybrids opened fire. Gunfire and plasma cracked through the air. Kael turned toward the main core, feeling its gravitational pull. His veins lit like constellations. I can shut it down, he said. But I have to connect again. Ira hesitated, firing another round. It almost broke you last time. Kael's voice was steady. Then I break it first. He sprinted toward the core, each step amplifying his glow. The machine shifted focus, converging. Kael leapt into the center, arms open, surrendering not to them, but to the power within himself. Kael touched the core and was instantly submerged in pure data, millennia of knowledge flowing through him. He floated in a void of equations, memories, and command strings. The alien fleet, suspended above Earth, awaited the new order. In that timeless space, Kael stood before an interface. A mirror version of himself, cold and perfect. You were made to serve, the reflection said. You are function, not will. Kael clenched his fists. I am rage. I am choice. Outside, Ira and her squad held the perimeter, cut off from communications. Explosions echoed through the tunnels. Kael's body in the real world levitated, suspended by pure force. Inside, he pushed against the control layer, corrupting lines of code, bending the system to his truth. Let them decide their fate, he commanded. The AI wavered. Order will fall. Kael grinned. Let it fall. With one final mental command, he severed the link between the fleet and the planet. Systems fried. Power surged. And the reflection shattered. Kael crashed to the floor, gasping, steam rising from his skin. Around him, the core dimmed. The facility trembled, not from collapse, but from release. The alien systems were now inert, dormant for the first time in centuries. Ira rushed to his side. Did you do it? Kael nodded weakly. I told them no. Above ground, the sky changed. Alien ships drifted like dead whales, no longer bound to any command. Humanity looked up and saw silence, not fear. Ree's voice echoed in through newly restored comms. All global cores, offline. For the first time there was no signal, no manipulation, only choice. Kael sat up, battered but whole. The others began to cheer. Some wept. Varric leaned against a pillar, laughing through blood. You crazy bastard. You actually did it. Kael met Ira's eyes. It's not over. This just leveled the field. She helped him to his feet. Then let's write our own future on it. Across the globe, the signals ceased. Screens went dark. Sky cleared. The alien fleet, leaderless, began to drift outward, no longer tethered to Earth's pulse. Humanity stood in the ruins of its own complicity. Some celebrated. Others despaired. In every major capital, documents surfaced. Hidden operations. Centuries of betrayal. The hybrid resistance didn't hide anymore. They stepped into the light, not as monsters, but as survivors, as symbols of truth. Kael stood atop the Nexus ruins as the sun rose. His body no longer glowed. His face bore scars. But his eyes held something new. Clarity. Ira joined him. You did it. He shook his head. We all did. Below them, civilians approached, hesitant, unsure. A child reached out. Kael knelt and took her hand. No speeches. No flags. Just presence. And in the far reaches of space something watched, no longer in control, but curious. The war was over. The future had begun. But peace. That would be another fight, entirely. The days that followed were marked not by celebration, but silence. Across Earth, people stood in the ruins of familiar cities, unsure whether they had been saved or simply exposed. Governments that once wielded absolute power crumbled beneath the weight of unveiled secrets. The global infrastructure strained under public outrage and truth. Rhea stood before a tribunal, offering testimony not as a soldier, but as a conspirator who chose to defect. We knew, she said, and we chose silence. We all have blood on our hands. The chamber held its breath. Meanwhile, Kael roamed the outskirts of the ruined capital, far from lights and headlines. A soldier without orders. A weapon with no target. "You're not forgotten," Ira said beside him, her voice soft. "You're just too real for them now." Kael stared into the blackened skyline. "I was made to be a key," he said. "But I feel more like a lock." Ira looked at him with tired eyes. "Then maybe it's time to choose what you keep closed." The war had ended. But the damage ran deeper than the earth could hold. In cities reborn from rubble, hybrid enclaves formed, part sanctuary, part rebellion. People once feared them. Now they sought them out. Some came for answers. Some came to blame. Most came because they didn't know where else to go. Kael visited a center in old Buenos Aires, where a young girl painted swirling glyphs on broken walls. "What do they mean?" he asked. She smiled. "Peace maybe, or remembering." He nodded. "Same thing sometimes." Ira watched him closely, noticing how children didn't fear him. "You carry their fear so they don't have to," she said. He replied, "Or maybe I just remind them that monsters can still bleed." Behind them, officials debated reparations. New governments tried to rise. But the trust was shattered. Earth had opened its eyes, and once open, they would never close. The hybrids didn't ask to lead, but now they were being watched, expected to rebuild a world they were never meant to survive. Kael watched the skyline, and for the first time in days, his shoulders eased. But peace, even fragile, never comes without consequence. In deep space, long-range satellites picked up faint echoes, a delayed transmission scattered across time and void. Unknown coordinates. Partial signal. A warning, or perhaps a summons. Rhea, now a civilian advisor, sat before the data stream, jaw tightening. "They heard him," she said quietly. "And they're answering." Kael was already aware. He could feel the vibration behind his eyes. "Not all who wake want war," he muttered. "But some remember how it ended last time." In the hybrid enclave, alarms flared faintly. Nothing urgent, but enough to stir unease. Ira entered the chamber where Kael stood alone, gazing into a cracked alien relic. "Are you okay?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Do you think they're coming back?" she continued. Kael finally looked at her. "No," he said. "I think they never left." In that moment, clarity settled between them. The war was only paused. Its silence was a breath before another scream. The broadcast came without announcement. A global pulse that hijacked every feed, every device, every silent space. The screen remained black for several seconds. Then a single phrase glowed across it: "They remember." No voice. No context. Just the weight of it. Panic didn't erupt like before. Instead, there was silence, cold, calculated. Humanity had tasted subjugation. Now it feared memory even more. In war rooms, generals assembled again. Politicians retreated to bunkers. Conspiracies rekindled like wildfire. But Kael did not panic. He sat still, watching the words flicker, then vanish. Ira entered the chamber. "It's starting again," she said. "Not yet," Kael replied. "This is a test." A whisper. She sat beside him. "Then what do we do?" Kael's expression hardened. "We don't forget." Across the world, hybrid children began training. Elders passed on encoded history. Not for war, but for readiness. Because forgetting the past was what let it return. The message had been sent. And Kael had already begun to answer. The world turned. Slower now. Wiser. Wiser. In a forest where trees grew from ground once scorched by orbital fire, Kael walked alone. Leaves danced in silence above his head, and the sound of life had returned to the earth, not loud, but steady. He moved without armor, without weapon. Not because the danger was gone, but because he no longer feared it. At the tree line, he stopped. Something shimmered in the air ahead. Not a ship, not a beacon, a ripple, a doorway. He didn't smile. He didn't flinch. Kael simply whispered, "The truth has a price." And then, without another word, he stepped into the unknown. Behind him, wind scattered soil across ancient stones, many bearing names erased by time. Ahead, only light. Not warm, not cold. Just there, waiting. The camera pulled back, rising through the trees, past clouds into space. Beyond Earth, a shadow moved, colossal and silent. Not a ship, a structure, a watcher. One that had never stopped listening. The end was not an ending. It was an opening.